There's about 100,000 million galaxies in the universe, so that means an awful lot of stars, and some of them, I'm pretty certain, will have planets where there was life, is life, or maybe will be life. I don't believe we're alone.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Oh yeah,
baby Bell.
Jocelyn Burnell.
See what I did there, Matt? Baby Bell. Do you remember that cheese?
It's still going, isn't it?
It's rubbish. But it did remind me of the cheese. Yeah, so there we go. Bell Burnell.
Yeah, she discovered pulsars. Controversially, didn't win the Nobel Prize. It was her supervisor that got it. But apparently she was never that fussed and could understand it.
Fair play. Well, what a discovery that is.
Well, it's one of the big uns. It's one of the big uns in the world of astronomy. Back in the 60s. And ever since, it's been discovery after discovery after discovery. The reason why I thought that was quite a good little quote.
Oh, yeah.
It was something that I saw, but one of our patrons, the Wuzzy, sent me this on Instagram as well. And she was a little bit concerned, I think, about the quote that the Telegraph went with their interview with Helen Sharman.
Yeah, I saw it on the BBC as well. It is kind of annoying that it makes people, that kind of quote is a little bit misleading, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So the quote was, aliens exist and may already be among us.
Sign up for Scientology.
So, yes, I should imagine that. I wonder if Helen was a little bit annoyed by that. I noticed that one of our other guests, Sarah Cruddas, wrote a piece, I can't remember where it was, Guardian, one of those, about how she believes that there's aliens out there and that we shouldn't be so snooty about it. Which, it's all conjecture, isn't it? There might be aliens, there might not. I mean, there's some good papers about how it's quite likely, in terms of intelligent life, it's quite likely that this is it, Jamie.
That's it. Yeah.
Which gives us a very, 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 very special place in the universe, does it not?
It really does.
So thanks for that. Do you know what? This is what Helen Sharman actually said, just to stick it into perspective. There are so many billions of stars out there in the universe that there must be all sorts of forms of life. Will they be like you and me, made up of carbon and nitrogen? Maybe not. It's possible. They're right here, right now. We simply can't see them.
So wait, did they take this quote from your interview with her?
No.
Okay.
No, I think they did. There was.
So this was a separate interview.
Yeah, I think obviously after being on the show, lots of the major outlets wanted to interview her. Well, of course,
they're like, well, if the IP are doing it, we better jump on the bandwagon.
If the IP think she's important enough, we should definitely be doing it.
Well, big shout out to Justin Young and Justin Roberts, the double Justin.
The double Justins for being ace. Our Patreons of pure aceness.
Pure aceness.
And thanks to them and people like them, 2020 is going to be amazing.
It is, isn't it? I've got a good feeling about it.
So shout out to those two and to all other 66 patrons, including the Wuzzy who sent us that lovely story about Helen Sharman.
Thank you, Wazir.
If you want to help us with our quest to put Ace back into space, where should they go, Jamie?
Well, there's only one website. It's www.interplanetary.org.uk.
Awesome. There's a birthday today, Jamie, a really cool birthday.
Oh, yeah.
An 84th birthday.
10th of January, so that'll be 1936. Well, the only person of note that day, if I remember correctly, was Robert Woodrow Wilson.
Oh, good call. Good shout, Jamie. That is encyclopedic knowledge of almost...
Memory Man.
You are Rain Man.
So... Shout out to the Athletico Mints podcast, the greatest podcast of all time, in my opinion.
Jamie, you can't presumably count this one. That's fair enough.
Well, of course not.
a podcast I listened to this week was Talk Nerdy, which had Neil deGrasse Tyson on it. And I'm not, as you know, I'm not normally a massive fan. I can't.
You're not his biggest fan.
Well, no. I can't get round the sort of perceived ego. But actually, after listening to that extended interview, I found it really inspirational. I really
like him. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Sometimes he comes across a little bit hammy, but I think overall he's just
I think his heart's really in the right place.
Very knowledgeable chap, isn't it? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I found it quite inspirational, actually. I thought that his whole take on you've got to try and be better every day at being a science communicator was very interesting. And so I recommend that. Anyone who wants to have a quick listen to a bit of science comm with Cara Santa Maria. And it was good, really good. I liked it.
Have a little listen.
Yeah. Robert Woodrow Wilson, Jamie, he did win the Nobel Prize back in 1978 for his 1964 discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation.
CMB?
The CMB, which you can see, of course, on some television screens as the sort of big fuzz that's happening there.
Ah, the big fuzz.
And, of course, what's famous about it is that they originally thought it was pigeon droppings all on the inside of their horn-like antenna.
Right.
And it wasn't. And once they cleaned it out, they were thinking, well, what on earth is this noise? And eventually it was found to be this CMB, and it's a really important corroboration of the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, my favourite theory.
Well, yeah.
But it's not a theory, is it, Matt?
It possibly is. And, of course, he did that with his Bell's Labs partner, Arno Allen Penzias. Yes, talking of removing pigeon droppings, Jamie, that's exactly what I've been doing this morning, is removing seagull droppings from my drain. And
you've had quite the day.
I've had quite the day.
Tell people where you've been.
I've been to A&E, Jamie, because what Loretta didn't tell me when she asked me to clean the drain out was that she'd stuck caustic soda down there earlier. So I'm sitting here with chemical burns all over my hands.
Poor Matt is bandaged up, still putting his all into the podcast. I mean, what other podcasts do that, huh?
Well, I'm just saying, if ever you do DIY jobs around your house,
put some marigolds on.
Be careful. It's one of the major causes of death and accidents.
Please be careful.
Jamie, we've got an interview coming up as well today.
Who we got today?
We have got a really unusual one, but probably a bit of a megastar, really. A guy called Matt Sharp.
Matt Sharp from Weezer. It was probably my favourite of last year. And it was so nice, wasn't it? Because we talked for a long time. I was standing outside in the freezing cold, wasn't I?
Yeah.
It was incredible. And I think that people will see him in a different light from now.
Yeah.
He doesn't just write songs about space. There's a lot more to this interesting fellow, as you'll hear.
Yeah, so he's got his seminal band, The Rentals, who've just done an album called Q36, out in June 2020. But what they're doing is dropping a tune. And when I say tune, these are pretty cool,
they're
aren't
bangers.
They? They're all worthy of the Space playlist, which is why we're interviewing
Definitely
them, of course.
Worthy.
And they drop every 2 weeks. What's your favourite so far, Jamie?
Ninth Configuration, Matt, is my favourite.
Oh, yeah, because you've seen the film, haven't you?
I absolutely love the film.
And there's spaceships.
Spaceships. I like the breaking and breaking and breaking.
Oh, yeah.
There we go, Matt. What thing in space does that remind you of?
Well, I guess aero braking.
Yeah. And James Webb.
Oh, no, don't say that.
Just kidding, just kidding.
But what's really funny, he wrote a song a few years ago called Elon, You're Making Me Sad.
Oh, well, he's making you sad, isn't he, Matt?
He is, which is the title of my next little piece. Elon, You're Making Me Sad.
Although, may I start off with saying, and I think I've got this right, sorry if it's a mistake, but congratulations, I think his girlfriend Grimes, the mighty Grimes, who I endorse in my other life. Congratulations. I think that you've got a little baby in your belly. Yeah, amazing news.
It is, isn't she? She posted some fetus superimposed over a slightly swollen belly in a raunchy shot.
Yes, she has Instagram have taken down the nipple photo and she's covered them up, which is ridiculous. But hey, congratulations, both of you. But anyway, back to Elon Musk.
You shouldn't be ashamed of the naked body, should you, Jamie? Well, apart from you, maybe, and maybe me. Now I've been disfigured by caustic soda.
I know you were once the male model of Ilfracombe, but now
I have had a promising career in hand modelling.
I know all those diamond ring contracts you got.
I know, gutting.
You'll have to use the left hand from now on.
I will. How did you know it was my?
Isn't that called The Stranger?
But what I don't understand, Jamie, is how do you know it was my right hand?
That's what you were going to clean bird poo with.
Yeah, I can understand that. So 7th of Jan. Let's move on, Jamie, because it's actually. I want to itch underneath my bandage, but I can't.
Oh, don't.
On the 7th of January, Elon Musk launched 60 Starlink satellites on a Falcon 9 Block 5 that had already flown 3 times.
Yes.
And do you know what's amazing about that? It had already put up 60 other Starlinks. So it was actually the same booster that stuck up the last lot of Starlinks, which means, as far as I can tell, that booster has launched 122 satellites, which beats the record set by ISRO's PSLV C-37, the Indian launcher, back in 2017, which only launched 104 in one go.
Jeez Louise. That's mental.
That is mental, isn't it? So yes, 122 satellites on the same booster. So obviously it's quite cheap for Elon to launch his own satellites using second-hand boosters, which means he's getting ahead of the competition like OneWeb. He's becoming one of the biggest satellite operators of all time. By the end of this year, he'll undoubtedly have the largest fleet of satellites of any known operator ever. And according to Eric Berger on Ars Technica, when I was reading his piece on this, absolute legend, if he manages to capture just 3% of global internet market, that would be worth $30 billion in revenue. So you can see why he's trying to do it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that too.
But
he's going to have nappies to pay for. So
yeah, exactly. So
don't blame him.
He's got quite a lot of. He's had quite a lot of nappies over the years. Hasn't he? He's got quite a
bit of side hustle.
So, but my real question is, after our chat with Moribar last week, which I found very, very interesting, Jamie, like super interesting, and what on earth, for example, must indigenous people looking up at the night sky over the next few weeks be thinking when they see these things flying over, these streams and streams of satellites as they go over?
That's very true. Yeah.
And I know that's
very true.
And I know that Elon said he's going to, try harder and harder to make these things less visible. But that Moribar interview really hit the nail on the head, where it's like he's not waiting enough time to see what the actual impact will be.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? That point of you can't just stick him up and just hope for the best. He could, something unforeseen might happen and it might not be the greatest thing. Hopefully not. Hopefully this will be a really great endeavour.
It's like all these kids on their vape pens, Matt.
Yeah.
We don't know yet what the long-term damage is.
No, particularly in America where they've got much stronger vape because of some quirk of how they dealt with it.
Eat an apple and go for a run.
Yes, absolutely, Jamie. We should be, or maybe meditate, or do something much more healthy.
That's why the kids hate us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Shut up, Grandad.
Shut up, Grandad.
Shut up, geek.
Anyway, I've been looking at Moribar's astrograph, and I found it really interesting that you can. It's really noticeable, the Starlinks, because they're all bunched together, so you can zoom out and you can see them really easily, and you can really see the impact they're having. It's quite good, because when I looked a second ago, they were just about to fly over England, and so I posted a little picture of them just about to... Cooey! So they've just flown over, Jamie, as we've been talking.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty good.
Sick.
Anyway, I want to talk about something very cool.
Go on.
There is a new exoplanet hunter out there. And this was sent in by patron Jelly Sock.
Oh, Jelly Sock, one of our favourite
Definitely
patrons.
one of our favourites.
Please go and follow her on Twitter. She's brilliant.
Brill. Yes, and she pointed out the NEID, which rhymes with fluid. The NEID.
NEID.
NEID. NEID. Exoplanet Hunter. Jamie, you are going to love this acronym because I think this might be the ultimate one. So NEID, NEID, stands for the NN Explore Exoplanet Investigations with Doppler Spectroscopy. And not the best thing about the NN Explore is that it's a nested acronym because the NN itself comes from the NASA NSF, the NASA National Science Foundation Exoplanet Observational Research Partnership.
Okay, we have a winner. That's definitely the best one.
It is Acroageddon.
Oh, man.
So, yes.
It reminds me a bit of My Sharona, the way it starts with NN.
Yes, well, I tell you what. We're not done with acronyms in this piece because it's just acronym after acronym. So the NEID is a new NASA-funded planet hunting instrument that's been installed on the WIN telescope, the WIYN telescope.
Let me guess.
Yep.
Wisconsin, Indiana, Yale, and the National Optical Astronomy Observatory,
otherwise known as the NOAO.
Get in.
So yeah, well, we're nested. It's like acronym Inception. This is. We don't know how far down we've gone.
We're folding in on ourselves.
So yes, the NEID is on Arizona's Kitt Peak, along with lots of other domes that you may find there because it's such a great place. And it's a spectrometer. And of course, it's going to be using the radial velocity method, as we talked about when we talked about chaos. And if you listen to that episode, you'll know we covered quite a lot of these things about why you want to do this. But so NEID, yes, is trying to detect small terrestrial planets around nearby stars. And it's kind of partnering up with NASA's TESS space telescope. As we said last time, this NEID will look at the radial velocity method, which as the planet goes around the star, it pushes and pulls and does a little cosmic dance. And you can work out what the mass of the planet is, but you've got no idea the size of it. Now, TESS is looking at the star and seeing how much it dims when the planet goes in front of it. And so can work out the size of the planet. Now, if you know both, you can know its density and know so much more about it. Like, it's so much more interesting when you know the density of the planet, whether it's rocky or gaseous. You can even get down to things like, does it have an atmosphere? Is it an exciting exoplanet, in other words?
Could it work out how dense I was?
Well, let's see. I guess it depends how fast you go back and forth on your train from Brighton to London. But just to give you some kind of indication about how sensitive these things are, Jupiter obviously is pretty massive, and it tugs and pulls on the sun. In fact, you could call the solar system a binary system because Jupiter manages to pull the sun far enough away from the center point that it's actually outside of a central point. So the co-orbiting point is outside the surface of the sun. So it is actually a binary, really, the Jupiter and the sun. That's how big Jupiter is. And it means that the sun is moving back and forth at roughly 13 meters a second, which is pretty incredible, isn't it? And even the Earth pulls the sun around by around about 10 centimeters a second. So that's not bad, is it?
It's not bad.
Normally, this type of telescope can only pick up about 1 meter per second. But NEID is a new generation, basically. It's really souped up 3 times the precision of previous instruments. So it's hoped that it's going to start doing some extremely precise radial velocity measurements and will be able to detect planets as small as the Earth that are orbiting around sun-like stars in the habitable zone. That's going to be super exciting. Over the next few years, between TESS and this NEID, they're going to start to be able to look for exoplanets that are Earth-like, that are nearby. So expect soon a raft of these brilliant new exoplanet discoveries. Jamie, are you excited by that?
I will be waiting with bated breath.
Yeah, So that's a pretty cool project.
Very, very cool indeed.
So yes, a lot to do with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They kind of manage it, and the spectrograph was built by the Pennsylvania State University, etc., etc. So massive effort there. But to add to that, Jamie, this week TESS was in the news because there was an announcement at the 235th meeting of the American Astronomical Society, which was in Honolulu, and TESS has uncovered its first Tatooine-style planet. And what do I mean by a Tatooine-style planet?
My goodness.
A planet that orbits a binary star system.
Not somewhere that's full of scum and villainy.
No. Well, you never know, it might be. But I think that would be more coincidence than something measured by TESS. But it's it's what's known as a circumbinary planet, a world that orbits two stars instead of one. TESS, of course, stands for the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, which I think's an acceptable acronym, don't you?
Nothing wrong with that.
So this new planet is known as TOI 1338b. Just so you know, the acronym TOI stands for TESS Object of Interest. That was it. Object of Interest.
Okay. I'll accept that too.
The TESS Object of Interest 1338b, the only known exoplanet around the star system TOI 1338. One of the stars is slightly larger than the Sun, and the other is a red dwarf, so about 30% the mass of the Sun. And they orbit really close together every 14.6 days. But the planet itself is about 6.9 Earth masses and is taking about 95 days to complete a single orbit around this binary star system.
95 days.
How long do you think this orbit will remain stable for?
I mean, it's got to be at least 10 million years, isn't it?
Oh, good. That's a very good estimate, Jamie. I think you're bang on. But I tell you what, I tell you what happens is the tilt changes quite a lot. So as the tilt's changing, they reckon from after November the 2023, the tilt will be so much that TESS won't be able to actually see it transiting the disk of the star system anymore, which is quite amazing, isn't it? And then it will tilt back down, so it will be visible again in 8 years' time. So you've got to take that into consideration when you're doing the transiting method. And apparently, the lead author, Vasilin Kostov, who is an astronomer from the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, who was at the conference giving this speech, he said that orbital tilt is something that you always see, well, very often see with circumbinary planets. So yeah, a planet about the size, somewhere in between Neptune and Saturn, orbiting a binary star system.
Oh, but don't get me started on Neptune. I just love Neptune, Matt.
We love Neptune. We all love Neptune.
So beautiful.
Isn't it? Beautiful Neptune.
It's got a beautiful hue.
Well, maybe you can help co-write the planet Neptune in my Love Songs of the Planet solo album, Jamie.
I will be proud.
Excellent.
To contribute.
Here's a nice little story about this, Jamie, this discovery.
Here we go.
There's a person called Wolf. I mean, that's a strong first name in the first place, isn't it?
That is great.
Wolf Cookier.
You're making these names up, aren't you?
I'm not. Wolf Cookier.
What was last week's? You had Professor Willie Benz and now Wolf Cookie.
Wolf Cookie.
Oh, sorry, Wolf. Brilliant name. I mean, I love it. I'm just jealous.
Wolf Cookier. He's just finished his junior year high school to work as an intern at NASA, and he was looking through the data that volunteers had flagged up as eclipsing binaries, and I believe that data had gone via the Zooniverse, not the Mighty Boosh Zooniverse, but the Zooniverse of Chris Lintott fame. 3 days into his internship, he spotted this binary system, TOI 1338, and thought it was a stellar eclipse, but the timing was all wrong. And he's managed to end up being one of the co-authors on the paper. How cool is that? So as an intern, he's a co-author on a scientific paper that discovered a circumbinary planet.
It's ridiculous. Do you want to hear what he said?
Go on then.
I was looking through the data for everything the volunteers had flagged on the eclipsing binary. A system where two stars circle around each other and, from our view, eclipse each other's orbit. About 3 days into my internship, I saw a signal from a system called TOI 1338. At first I thought it was a stellar eclipse, but the timing was wrong. It turned out to be a planet. Do you think of my New York accent?
I like it. So he then passed this on to the other researchers, and they used a software program called Eleanor. And Eleanor isn't an acronym. It's named after Carl Sagan's character in Contact.
Oh, no way.
Eleanor Arroway, of course.
Oh, I love that.
And yes, this piece of software bunged out the result.
King Carl. Brilliant.
Actually, Jamie, the one thing I forgot to mention about NEID, this new ground-based telescope that's going to partner up with TESS, is that NEID, because it sits on the land that belongs to the Tohono O'odham nation, NEID is a pronunciation that evokes a word that roughly translates as to see in the Tohono O'odham language.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
So not only is it a nested acronym, it does make a word.
I love that, Matt. Thank you.
Talking of circumbinary planets, do you know how many have been discovered so far?
Actually not sure, so I'm going to hazard a guess. Is it 23?
So I tell you what, if that's a guess, Jamie,
I'm doing well today,
you really are. You've absolutely nailed it. 23.
Oh my God.
23. Do you want? I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
1993 was the first one. 2.5 times Jupiter's mass, orbiting a pulsar and a white dwarf somewhere in the globular cluster M4.
What about the 2011 Kepler 16b, 200 light years from Earth in Cygnus? Frozen world of rock and gas. About the mass of Saturn.
That is pretty cool. So what does it orbit?
Yeah.
What does it orbit? Another white dwarf or something?
It orbits two stars, Matt, that are also circling each other. One is about 2/3 the size of our sun, and the other about the 5th size of our sun. Orbits of the stars by the planet takes 229 days, while the planet orbits the system's centre of mass every 225 days. So the stars eclipse each other every 3 weeks or so. That's nice.
Well, that is nice. So that actually is quite a similar system to what TESS has uncovered, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so Kepler, I think, has done most of those. 12 circumbinary planets in 10 systems.
Good old Keppers.
Yeah. Wow.
Always coming in with the big stats.
Yeah, so, but the thing that makes TESS slightly different is that it is designed to find this kind of thing. So I think over the next few years, we're going to see lots and lots and lots of these circumbinary planets being discovered.
Well, talking of discoveries, shall we listen to our interview?
Matt Sharp of the band
Here we go.
The Rentals.
And Weezer.
Écoutez.
Roll it.
The Interplanetary podcast, putting the ace back into space.
We are joined on the podcast by Matt Sharp, who is a legendary musician. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Well, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, Matt, we understand that the album Q30, is it Q36?
Yes, Q36.
Q36. So this has come. So you've released, I believe, is it 2 singles, and there's another couple on their way? Is that right?
Well, yeah. We've released 2, and there's another 14 on their way.
Sure.
We're releasing. I made a record with Nick Zinner, who is the guitar player for the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and Ronnie Vannucci, who plays drums in the Killers. And Dave Fridman mixed the album for us. And I guess you would know him from like Flaming Lips and MGMT and that kind of stuff. And we made this album together, the 4 of us. It's not a concept album in a traditional sort of I don't know, Rush 2112, the guy finds a guitar and hears his story or whatever. It's all the songs aren't tied together that way, but they are tied through the common theme of science fiction and outer space, some fiction, some nonfiction, some fiction songs, but outer space kind of binds all the songs together. It's a double album. It's 16 songs. We decided, instead of releasing it in today's world, it's like, it doesn't matter honestly what you release, if it's a book or a painting or a movie or a thing, you're going to put it out, and at the most you're going to get a week's worth of attention, usually like less than a half a day's attention, but maybe it stays in people's minds for 2 weeks at the most or something like that. And so we decided, instead of getting 2 weeks focus on the entire album, we would just kind of share each song with our followers and hopefully some people we haven't met, and just be able to focus on that one song at a time. Release a new song every 2 weeks, essentially.
For me, you can't go wrong with a double album that's essentially a space concept album, and that you've literally hit pay dirt with me. That's my dream concept. So what's the title Q36? What's the significance of that?
Well, that I should probably keep a secret. Because I find these things are better when other people have their own ideas about what the meanings behind things are. A good example of that is the first rental song that ever came out was a song called Friends of P, and probably our most successful song back in the time that we were talking about before we started, back in 95, 96. We never told anybody who P was or what P was at that time. And we got the most extraordinary letters at the time, when people were like sending letters to your mailbox or whatever, and they would just be these wild sort of people that had I felt like they really knew what it was all about. Some people would think it was like the Psychic Friends Network that was led by Dionne Warwick. I don't know if you remember any of that kind of stuff. That's maybe an American thing only. But there was all sorts of things like that,
Well, this is a challenge for our listeners. Who can be the first to discover the album title? Amazing. Well, one thing we do know is the single Forgotten Astronaut, which is about our dear Michael Collins, which actually we're kind of kindred spirits with you in the sense of whenever we do a show, a podcast show, we did a live one a few weeks ago where we opened up by saying, who knows apart from Buzz and Neil who went to the moon, and only a couple of people out of about 50 knew. So it's kind of close to our heart. So
yeah, that's interesting. That was absolutely my experience with it, and that was sort of the starting point, or the inception point of writing the song in general, was that I had been reading about his writing, and I kind of throughout this whole album went down the rabbit hole of different people, and definitely spent some time reading about Apollo 8 and his involvement in Apollo 8, and reading about that got me interested in reading about his life from his point of view. And as I was reading it, I was telling friends of mine, I'm reading this extraordinary book about Michael Collins. And, just across the board, people were like, who? What? And it was very interesting that many of the folk that I was talking with, in their mind, only two people went on that mission at all, that it was just the two of them. And I don't think they really even had a clear picture. They just knew two people went and two people got on the moon, two people came back.
Right.
Which is pretty extraordinary for something that was this, like milestone in mankind's achievements, and has just been gone over note by note to death, of every little detail, of every little thing, of nobody that was had caught the public's imagination like the three of them had 50 years down the line. That people thought, two people went to the moon, was, I thought, extraordinary, and was sort of the starting point of this song. So.
Well, it's a great song, and we actually did a feature on Michael Collins, didn't we, Matt? And actually, the more we dug into his background, the more we became huge fans of his. His story is absolutely incredible.
His book is the best of the autobiographies as well. It's so well written. He's such an eloquent writer as well. Did you feel compelled then to address the balance? Was that part of it, or did you just enjoy his story and want to tell it?
The idea wasn't, I want to write a song that celebrates him so much. More of just thinking about somebody that is in that place. You're in a serious situation, but your mind drifts to these to these more banal thoughts or whatever. So that was part of it, thinking about at that point in history, right in those moments, thinking about like your kind of lighter, sillier thoughts against the background of that you're, by yourself, on the dark side of the moon and out of contact or whatever it might have been. And, as people called him at the time, the loneliest man in the world or whatever it was, which he refutes. Right. But just it was sort of a joy to think about that elements of, even though that they're task oriented and they're doing that stuff, you can't help by your mind firing off little questions or things that you're just like, oh, put that away, And so it was just sort of funny to think about what those might have been. That's is in the song. And then I think another element of it was thinking about another thing that we all have, which is there are certain things in life that you want more than anything else in the world, and that you're singularly focused on and you think is the path and the meaning to your life. And I think as it was with Michael, as it was for every one of the Apollo and Gemini astronauts and Mercury, that thought of being the first man or one of the first men on the moon was a singular focus, and singular goal for each one of them. And they were all incredible goal-oriented, task-masking people, right? That would accomplish, set out to do these extraordinary things and accomplish them. And for people like that to want something so focused on such a thing and to maybe not achieve that thing, that part interests me quite a bit. I know that there's been times in my life where there's things that I've wanted so bad and had thought that, that's the path to, I don't know, having a rich life or something like that. Then you don't achieve it. And as the years go on, you look back and you go, God, I'm so glad I didn't get that thing I wanted. And I thought about that with Michael a little bit. I don't know if it's true or not, but I know some people that are not, I wouldn't say close in his circle, but known him, have worked with him, and have said that that fact that he sort of faded from the public's imagination was definitely by design on his part. It's interesting just to think about those sorts of things, the things that we want when we're at a certain age and we're focused on. Sometimes, you find out that not achieving them was the best thing that could have possibly happened to you.
It's a really interesting theme, actually, isn't it? Like, also, what other world events were there where people are unsung heroes, who just happen to not get the credit for something? It's quite interesting. But could you tell us about the ninth configuration?
Ninth configuration. One of the song is based on the book, and there was a movie made by the same of the same title. And essentially, when you start writing songs, for this particular album, I decided to start with 50 ideas, 50 songs, essentially. It starts out from just kind of stream of consciousness. For me, I'll be playing over an acoustic guitar, singing, a certain melody over some chords, and you're kind of just, whatever's coming out of you vocally is some, half intelligible, half not intelligible, a little bit of that Paul McCartney singing Scrambled Eggs and that kind of idea, there might be like some keywords in there that you find out when you go back to listen to your ideas and you listen to them, you say, well, what the hell is that about? That's got this one's got something where, and this particular one was all this rambling about an astronaut in an asylum. And so it sent me down this other rabbit hole, as we were talking about earlier, of just trying to research, God, the the idea, just as we were talking about with Michael, but during the whole space race, the fever pitch that sort of rang up to that, with everything that they were putting these men through, and dogs and monkeys and everybody through, the question sort of came to me of being curious if any of these folks had mental breakdowns from it. I mean, it can't be, I was thinking it can't be that every one of these people were strong enough to take these incredible stress tests that they were putting everybody through. And, it's been so well documented, all the demanding, like, sort of physical and mental sort of tests that they put all these candidates through. That question came to me is like, did anybody really suffer from this? Did anybody have a breakdown while, Russian, American, Chinese, or otherwise have a difficult time either, mentally with either the preparation of going into outer space or in returning, And so I was just going down that, just trying to find out, okay, did any of these guys have to be locked away? So this, basically, I had was searching for this scenario, seeing if any astronauts had sort of had a mental breakdowns, either in the preparation or in returning home. Couldn't find anything except for this film. Basically, the synopsis of the film it's very, I guess, convoluted, but it's about an astronaut who's about to go on a mission to the moon and has a breakdown in the capsule as they're about to take off. So they abort the mission, and he is put into an asylum where during the end of the Vietnam War, where the Section 8s from American troops were put. And so it's this one astronaut who's very famous in this insane asylum. They send a Marine psychiatrist to figure out which one of these men are faking their situation to just basically avoid going to war. And the astronaut is this outlier there, and the psychiatrist becomes obsessed with the astronaut and finding out why he's afraid of going to the moon. As the story unfolds, you find out that the psychiatrist is not actually a psychiatrist, but it's his brother that runs the insane asylum, and he is a patient that was in Vietnam and went crazy, killed a bunch of children and families. They thought if they put him in this hospital and they let him pretend he was a psychiatrist, and if he could, help others, maybe he would be able to help himself. So basically, that's the song. It's somewhat of basically just a telling of the synopsis of the film. It's
an absolutely fantastic film.
We wanted to see at one point if it would sync up to the entire album, sort of as a Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz kind of mashup. We wanted to see, and it almost works. So maybe at the end of the album, when it's all done, we'll try to see if we can how to do that, because it's
definitely keep us in the loop on that one. Because I discovered it just because Exorcist was one of my favorite films, and then I sort of thought, well, I'd better watch what else he's done. So yeah, absolutely incredible. For anyone who hasn't seen it, please go and try and find it.
We have spoilt the plot somewhat.
Oh, right. Yeah, that is true.
You bastards.
The psychiatrist actually being a patient is really the big reveal. So, whoops.
Don't worry. We'll put a spoiler alert at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Sound-wise, when you were putting these singles and songs and tracks together, was there any specific route that you were going down to give it kind of that space feel? Or did you just kind of get in a studio and see what happened?
The album was a collaboration with myself and Nick Zinner. And he is somebody that I've wanted to work with for ages. And it might be, I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was, but it might be about 10 years ago. Or my God, maybe longer than that now. The Yeah Yeah Yeahs had covered the first song on the first Rentals record. They did like a live recording of the song "The Love I'm Searching For," and just after it came out, I was at a New Year's party, and Nick was there, and I probably had one too many, but I just went up to him and told him how excited I was that they had covered that song, and it's a really sweet. It's unusual for them. It's just him on an acoustic guitar and her singing, and it is very charming and sweet. And it's they probably cut out about like half the song. She gets about half the words right, and about half the words are like just whatever. And it's ultimately it's more charming and like a better version than the original in many ways. And I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I had a few, and Nick happened to be there, and I went up to him and told him how sweet I thought that version was, and how flattering that was that they would have done that. Told him, I would really like it for if there was, I have a feeling that we'll be making a record together someday. And I was probably, like I said, in one few too many or something at that point. And I think the next day I probably woke up and was like, a little embarrassed by that, because you're thinking that he would probably walk away like, yeah, right. We're going to make a record together. But he was like, he was sweet about it. And 10 years later, these songs started coming together, and I was trying to figure out how we're going to, this whole record lives in outer space, and who should take us there. I saw something locally that Nick was doing a lot. He was scoring the movie Spirited Away live. I think it was just him on guitar over the movie Spirited Away. And I had realized I just missed it. And so I wrote to him and said, hey, I just missed this show. I really wish I would have seen it, but there's a few songs I would like you to hear. And just like, I didn't, and get your opinions on it. That when he came over, I think I must have played him some ungodly a number of songs, maybe 20 some songs or something, and just told him what I would tell you is that I was like, if there's one person that I feel like can take a song to outer space, it is him. He is uniquely, the way he plays guitar, it's certainly, he creates this sort of cinematic world, that you can live in. And I played him these songs thinking that, it was probably unlikely that he would want to do it. And when we were done, he lifted up his pant leg to show his socks had aliens all over them. And so that was basically his sign that I'm in, But he said, well, send me these two songs right here. And by a few hours later, he sent them back to me with put in perfectly into the worlds where they belonged, and sort of created these sort of places you can inhabit. Wow. That's one of the luckier things where I feel very, very fortunate to be able to work with him, especially because I can just, on my own end, probably one of the reasons the record took so long to make was I could just spend time being in his world,
Incredible. Wow, what a talent to do it that quickly as well. Nice.
The whole record with Nick was done where we were apart from each other. He did it in his home studio, and I worked from my home studio. The other folks that contributed to the album, it was more of a being in the same room, collaborating situation. But he wanted to do it that way, and I honestly feel like the record is a much better record because of it, because I think I would have tried to have micromanaged where he was going, instead of just letting him be free and create and come up with things that I wouldn't have, that I may have influenced in a negative way by just trying to control it.
You've actually got the whole album in the can but you're seeping it out.
Yeah,
one
that's
song
right.
At a time, is that correct?
That's right.
And
there is an effort with the space communities of creating works of art and creating things in pop culture that support exploring other worlds and are sort of, well, in the case of with Michael's thing, kind of bringing light to his passions, you know. And one of the thoughts about Forgotten Astronaut that, I mean, it's my personal hope, if I could have one thing that would come out of it, and it's happened with just a few of my people that I'm close to, is that the song encourages people to, you know, read his works, you know, read the books that he's written, and or just, you know, or an easier thing is just to go onto YouTube and watch interviews with Michael and be able to understand where his passions are now. I think that's all of that stuff is very, very positive. So people in that community they're looking for those sort of like-minded thoughts. You know, Michael's very passionate about going to Mars and exploring, you know, to going deeper into space, all the positive things that come with that. And he's been, I think, a very big critic of what we've done so far, you know, that we could have done quite a bit more.
That's very cool. I mean, what we're trying to do on this show is of a similar vein, in that we're trying to shine a light on things that might not be so much in people's consciousness. So we love that. And thanks very much for doing it. I mean, if people want to know more about the record, where would you advise them to go? Is this just a case of heading to the Rentals website, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's all of the typical online places. You can follow the Rentals on Twitter or on Instagram, and that's just at the Rentals. Or our website is therentals.com. And that will take you to all of our various outlets. You can also follow me on _Matt Sharp in those places, and that's how we're releasing it through those avenues. And if you search for the Rentals on YouTube, you can find, you know, all sorts of that we're releasing little behind the scenes videos of making each song, and little live performances that we're doing during the release. We're doing sort of impromptu, just showing up at unusual places and coming up with ways to perform each track as well.
Well, if you plan to tour in London, let us know, and we will buy you a drink to say thank you.
All right. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited that it's going to be out there. We definitely would. I certainly appreciate just like engaging with people that are also passionate about these subjects, and it's really cool to be able to collaborate with you guys on it.
Awesome, thank you.
We keep a space playlist, so obviously the tracks are going straight on there as well, onto our playlist of space songs. Actually, I've got one last question. Other than your own material, have you got a space song? And you're not allowed to choose Bowie. Have you got a space song to go on the playlist? Have you got some obscure space track that you'd like to put on there?
What's funny is throughout making the album, the majority of the music that I listened to was I never listened to any space related music while I was working on the record. Maybe that's a conscious choice, just to not be influenced by folks that have been in that world before. I'm always a little apprehensive about that. So throughout the making of the album, I just listened to like 50s soul music mostly, you know, nice. 50s and 60s soul and old country music from the kind of that same period, which is much more grounded and not thinking about the stars in the solar system and everything. So I was in that world. So I actually haven't spent. That's why I am definitely curious to dive into your playlist, because I haven't spent any time there at all. The only places that I did were going down just with each song individual rabbit holes, and just learn as much as I could about, well, in the case of Ninth Configuration, about learning about the book and learning about the movie and how it was filmed and all those things. And I desperately want to interview Stacy Keach for he's still kicking. So I'd love to interview. I would love to interview Stacy Keach about the making of that film and have I'm sure a ton of questions for him about that. But it would be like that. I would just go. So instead of, like you said, Bowie's like Space Odyssey or whatever, I just stayed away from all of that stuff as much as possible, and would just, read about whatever the particular subject of the songs. This album, Q36, the one thing that makes it quite a bit different from earlier Rentals music or anything that I've worked on personally is that in the past, the majority of the music that I made was just straight slice of life out of your diary, kind of a page torn out of your diary sort of thing, where it was just talking about the literal thing that was happening in your day. Or the relationships you were in or whatever it might be. And I started writing for Q36, and as soon as I, not knowing it would be that, but as soon as I decided I'll write 50 songs and then I'll see if there's a common theme in there somewhere. And so I started writing, and the first moment I sat down to, sing about whatever was going on in my day, and I did the Interplanetary podcast, whatever, and and I was just like, fuck, I am so bored with my own story, and I had been doing that my whole life, singing singing directly from out of what the literal thing was that was happening in my life. And I decided that instead of, trying to write 50 songs and figure out what brought them together, I'd write 50 songs, but the one rule would be they can't be about, a direct autobiography. So I started from purely writing about, either made up little fables and stories, or getting interested in other people's lives and other people's work, writing from that perspective instead.
What a great thing. And yeah, you must check out the playlist, because we've got some of our listeners to add to it. And I think we're over 120 now, are we, Matt, or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was your one rule, no Bowie.
No, well, no, Bowie's on there, but it's just that obviously it's too obvious a choice. But it's surprising how much stuff there is out there. Flaming Lips did a really good one. Christmas on Mars. Do you know that one? It was.
It was a film, right? And so the music just is just the soundtrack to the film. Is that what it is?
I believe,
So Dave Fridman mixed the album with me, and it was essential to me when I met Nick that Dave be a part of essentially built the album, be built from the three of us to be the sort of the three pillars of the album. And it was only towards the end where Ronnie Vannucci came in and helped me a great deal by adding drums over top of the old loops that I had made. But Dave was essential to it. And it was funny. My first band was the band Weezer. And Dave worked for a very short period towards the end of our second album. He worked on the record Pinkerton. And from my memory is so vague, but I believe he only did like some of the backing vocals and a few little things towards the end. He would be able to tell you better than I would. But that was in 1996 or 7. And we had been talking on and off over, however many years that is, of like, one day we have to do something together again. But Dave is really, really, he's really strong, kind of in a Phil Spector sense. Like if you're going to do a Phil Spector record, you have to be like, you have to be coming from a place of strength. You can't, and I think it took me this long in my life to be confident enough to stand in a ring with him, and to be able to, he was somebody that I felt was absolutely essential to making the album. And I told him that if essentially I was going to wait for as long as it took for us to do the album together. So if we had finished the songs and finished it, I would just put it away if he wasn't ready, and I would wait till the day that he was ready to do it. So we were talking about it, and he said, well, what is it? I said, well, I'm making a record with Nick Zinner about outer space. And he just wrote back in, Nice. So I think we had him at outer space. And like you said, he had done that. If the Flaming Lips record would have been done with him, all their records essentially, except for maybe one or two.
Amazing.
The very last thing I wanted to say was that what is the computer program that everybody shares in where it searches for signs of life in outer space? Do you know what I'm speaking about?
Yeah, the SETI program.
Yeah, so he has that running through his mixing board the entire time. So as soon as you pause to work, the computer switches over to that, and it's and I thought when I arrived that he had almost like set that up because this is, because this of the theme of the record. And he was,
well, Matt, next time you see him, tell him that Jamie from the Interplanetary podcast's money is on Europa. That's where the smart money is at.
Put the smart money on Europa.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome, beautiful. I'm sure. I'll let him know. He'll be right in there on it. He's.
Thanks very much for coming
great.
on. Obviously, space music. It absolutely floats our boat. It hits all the right spots. And I've heard Spaceships and I've heard Forgotten Astronaut. Those are the two I've heard, and I absolutely love those tracks. They're brilliant.
I can't wait for you to hear Ninth Configuration. It's definitely a left turn from those two. So I'm excited to share all of that with you, and maybe towards the end of the releases we can come back on again, because like I said, this is taking us all the way to June. There's layers and layers of synthesizers that sort of are interwoven with Nick's guitars, and they're supposed to be done in such a way where you can't tell exactly what is a guitar and what is a synth and what is, and that kind of thing.
I have to say, I really like the kind of, I couldn't quite place the era. It was kind of got this timeless electronica sound to it. It's really, really cool. Really cool.
Cool. I appreciate that. It's very nice of you to say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's keep in touch. And like I say, if you need anything else from us, let us know. But we'd love to get you back on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for all your listeners, read Flying to the Moon and Carrying the Fire and any other thing that you see with Michael's name on it. I definitely encourage that. And there is a book on Apollo 8 that's also tremendous. If to me, the Apollo 8 book was the one that got to the thing that we all sort of want to get to, which is having there's so much when these guys talk about their own experiences, when you look up the interviews with the astronauts that did these extraordinary things, there's so much of it is based in the technical.
Yeah.
But the stuff that fascinates me the most is the more personal stories, and so I really recommend. It's by Jeffrey with a K, his last name. Look that up, Jeffrey K. Apollo 8 book. It's unbelievable when you see what these people were made of, not just the men, but their wives, their family, their children, like how extraordinary it is, the situations they were in and how they dealt with them. And it's well worth reading. And that book in particular puts a real personal touch, as do Michael's, where you get a more sense of not just this is a 3-stage rocket and it took this and technical, because it is, all that stuff is wonderful and is fascinating, but it's really the stories of their families and and losing their friends, as Michael has lost so many friends of being a test pilot and all of that is extraordinary, that that they're able to be wired in such a way that they can lose people that are close to them, like Apollo 1, and then proceed to take on the same challenges. It's like, how does anybody do that is beyond me,
Yeah, it's insane. And thanks for the tip.
Absolutely. All right, fellas.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
The Interplanetary podcast is alive!
I really enjoyed that interview. It was fraught.
Wasn't that just great?
It was fraught with technical difficulties. You were standing out in the cold somewhere in Brighton. I was somewhere in Devon, living it up with a perfectly formed right hand.
Matt was in his studio, but we did have a few signaling, but it didn't put us off, did it? We kept coming back. And I'm glad we did, because that was great.
It was.
We need to get him back again, I think.
It was great. To finish this podcast out, I'm going to do a quick shout out to the Skylon patrons. You ready? Going to strap yourself in?
It's about time. Hit me.
Thank you so much to the Skylon patrons. Dr. Bob Hodges.
Love you, Dr.
John
Bob.
Bennock.
Love you,
Julio
John.
Aprea.
Love you, Julio.
Karel Sim.
Love you, Karel.
Darren Fuchs.
Love you, Darren.
Sven Nauhaus.
Oh, Sven. Love you.
Patrick Haywood.
Love you, Patrick.
Stas Shusha.
Love you, Stas.
Mark Schwim.
Love you, Mark.
Rob Annabel.
Rob, I'm in love with you.
Christopher Andreasen.
Chris. It's not me, it's you. I love you.
Auden Vala.
I love you.
Sounds like Odin Valhalla. I wonder if it's related.
Oh
Anthony Peggs.
Anthony, I'm in love with you.
Matt Gilliland.
I've always loved Matt.
So, what a fantastic bunch.
Who wants to join
them? And the rest of the legends who email and Instagram and tweet us.
I mean, what else are you going to do in 2020?
Keep going, everyone. We love it.
Well, listen, have a good weekend, everybody. Make sure you look at the moon, wherever you are. Just dream of some boots on there very soon.
Dream of boots.
Dream, 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 dream of boots.
Dream of boots.
That remix will be available as a ringtone on next week's show.
Bye-bye, Spodcats.
See you soon, bye.